Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Morning JOX. Conrad Van Order and Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock as we have another week of college football, which means another week of the college football playoff rankings, and that's surely going to dominate a lot of the conversation, not only on this show, but across the college football landscape, at least for today, because there were some interesting things you could take away from last night. Not really any movement at the top. Not that I don't think that was a huge surprise to anybody. I think there were some, I'm sure the John Macks of the world are a little disappointed that Texas A&M had to stay put at number 3. But not a lot of whole movement at the top. But what really happens after those first 5 or 6 spots is where things started to get interesting. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. But if you were worried for some reason that, man, Alabama didn't look great against LSU, well, they're still number 4, so you have nothing to worry about. They are firmly in the number 4 spot, just like they were in the first edition of the rankings. So no changes there, at least as far as all of that is concerned. And really the top 5 stayed exactly the same because you had Ohio State at 1, Indiana 2, A&M at 3, Alabama 4, and Georgia at 5. And then you started to get a little bit of the movement. So we'll run through it really quick. Texas Tech, they bumped up all the way to number 6 after what they did to BYU over the weekend, which, I thought that was really, really impressive, the way that they won that game, and especially the way that they manhandled BYU. That Texas Tech defense is really, really good. Ole Miss, they fell to number 7. Then you have Oregon, they're at number 8 after they got that last-second win at Iowa over the weekend. Notre Dame at number 9, Texas at 10. Right behind them, you have Oklahoma at 11. BYU, they fall to number 12 after losing to Texas Tech. Utah at number 13, and they had kind of talked about this. I think Greg actually is the one that brought it up on the broadcast last night of how them putting Utah at 13, maybe they're a team that's getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but you also have a BYU team that, I guess the feeling was with the way they lost to Texas Tech that you probably would have dropped them further if you could, but you kind of boxed yourself in as the committee because Utah was at 13, BYU has the head-to-head, can't move them behind 13.
Yep.
So, and on top of the fact that, think about it like this, Utah is 7-2, BYU only has 1 loss. So they could lose again and not move at all because they would still have the same record with the head-to-head. So that's maybe something to keep an eye on there as we move forward. And that's maybe a situation where, like we saw last year, and they brought this up of you kind of box yourself in a little bit as a committee, and then you have to make a drastic change at the end that pisses people off because, well, sorry, we kind of didn't think ahead early in the rankings, and we had to shuffle some things around. Nonetheless, at number 14, Vanderbilt, after their win over Auburn this weekend, they're at 14. Miami jumped up 3 spots. They're up to number 15 now. That's an interesting discussion that we'll have here in a minute as well. Georgia Tech, they're at 16. USC 17. Michigan 18. Virginia 19. And Louisville 20 after both of those teams lost over the weekend. Then you have Iowa at number 21. Pitt at 22. Tennessee at 23. And unlike last week, you do have a group of 5 team that's actually ranked this week, and that is USF, who comes in at number 24, and then Cincinnati comes in at 25. So certainly some movement, a lot of movement in the back half of the rankings, and a couple of new faces there on the tail end of it. I will say this. I thought, the parts where they were talking to the committee last night, I think the highlights for me had to be when Reese asked them, because they were having a discussion about Texas Tech, right? And has Texas Tech earned maybe a spot potentially, could they maybe move up to number 5 or number 4 where Alabama and Georgia are, because they've looked really, really impressive. And I think the question is, well, what happens if, let's say Texas Tech goes and wins the Big 12 and they're 12-1, and you have an 11-1 Georgia that misses the SEC title game. Would Texas Tech be able to jump that Georgia team, or is the committee just so set on the top SEC teams that they view there's a big gap there? And you had Mack Rhodes say that Texas Tech has kicked too many field goals in the red zone when they should have scored touchdowns, and that's the reason. Which, I guess, of all the excuses we've heard in the past, like, at least that one's like, okay, it sounds like you made it sound like you did some research and you had something in your back pocket ready to go, but I thought that was kind of comical.
Yeah. Like, it comes back to the conversation of game control where, other teams are scoring touchdowns. They settling for field goals. But I think I look at it from this perspective. Their defense is what's really kind of keeping them in ball games.
Correct.
And can't really deny that, of course, the schedule of what the SEC is week in and week out, it is what it is. But what Texas Tech has done in the Big 12 is completely shifted how most teams are built or how operated, because we're so used to them being just the high-powered offenses. Well, Texas Tech is doing it on the defensive side where they're physically beating people, which I get that you're saying, they're not necessarily blowing teams out, but they're controlling majority of the ball games that they're in. So I'm not necessarily saying that that's not a interesting, or I'm not going to say that's like a quote-unquote beneficial look, but I get it. But to that point, if they're the Big 12 champion and they have identical records as, Georgia or Alabama or teams like that don't necessarily make it to the SEC championship, or even Ole Miss, they're ahead of Ole Miss, but they're kind of in a unique spot with that one loss, but they're a conference champion. So does the committee look at the SEC of, they're playing the best week in and week out, but Texas Tech has done nothing, besides that one blemish, they've done nothing but handle their business like they're supposed to. Do they get the benefit of the doubt of being, technically in that top four? But we shall see as the season goes on.
Yeah, it'll be certainly interesting to watch as that moves along. The other thing that I thought was funny is if you listen to Mike Griffith's interview on 3-Man Front yesterday, he literally said this exact thing. And when they were talking about Texas A&M and how they discredited the Missouri win a little bit because, well, that was a Missouri team that hadn't been the Missouri team we've seen early in the season, and they're without a quarterback. And it was just funny because he had brought up that exact sentence yesterday of, this is what the committee's going to tell you. And then his response to that was, so we're giving Purdue credit for having their starting quarterback against Ohio State? Because I'm pretty sure that Matt Zollers from Missouri is probably a higher recruit than whoever Purdue's rolling out there on every Saturday. And I was like, all right, look, I know some people maybe don't like Mike and his opinions, but that was pretty good. Like,
yeah, he was spot on.
It was, you nailed that one, brother. So yeah, I got a kick out of that as well. But again, it's just, on the one hand, and they talked about on the broadcast, right? It's the consistency of week to week now. It looks like they're going to respect some of the same thing, right? And what you mean by that is mainly the fact that the top three didn't change at all, right? Because I know after the Indiana-Penn State game, a lot of people were probably calling for A&M to at least jump up to number 2. But it does at least seem that they're going to be consistent. Now, do we agree with that? Maybe or maybe not, but maybe the strength of schedule and the strength of metrics that they have talked about, Texas A&M has a little bit of an advantage in those, and they haven't honored that up to this point in the rankings, which, I don't know how, I guess I don't know how to feel about that, but at least I can respect the fact that you're not each and every week changing which criteria you're going to bring up is what's important. So you do have that consistency there. So that helps just a little bit. But we know the rankings as they lay out, that's not exactly what the bracket would look like. So this is where things get a little interesting. So this is how the bracket would look if the season ended today, which it is not, but if it did. Your 1 seed is Ohio State. They would play the winner of the 8 and 9 seed game. That would be 8 seed Oregon and 9 seed Notre Dame. Your 2 seed Indiana, they would await the winner of the 10-7 matchup, which would be 10 seed Texas and the 7 seed Ole Miss. Texas A&M at the 3 seed, they would await the winner of Texas Tech, the 6 seed, and Miami, the 11 seed. That's the highest ranked ACC team. So that's why they're slotted in there right now. And then number 4 seed Alabama, they would take on the winner. How about this one? You'd either get a rematch with Georgia or you would get a game against USF. So that would be fun. The good news, if you're an Alabama fan, you're not going to stay at number 4. I find it hard to believe that they're going to stay there because you're either going to win the SEC championship and you're probably going to be number 2, or whether you lose in the SEC title game or let's say you lose to Oklahoma or Auburn. Well, if you lose both of them, you're going to fall out completely. But if you lose one of those games and then go to Atlanta and let's say you still lose there, you're probably going to host a home playoff game, but you're not going to be one of the top 4 seeds. So you're probably not going to have to worry about that matchup unless those seeds change as well. But the interesting thing to note here, I think, is Miami. And the thing with Miami is that they are currently the top-ranked ACC team, which is why they are in the bracket. However, they do not control their own destiny to make the ACC title game. So as it stands right now, if these two teams win the rest of their games, Georgia Tech and Duke are going to play each other in the ACC championship game, which would mean Miami would have to be an at-large bid in order to get in, which is why, it's important that they moved up a few spots last night, right? Because that shows you that there is hope, right? But they're going to need some help, right? They're going to be in a spot not dissimilar to what they were in last year, it looks like, right? Where you're going to need some teams ahead of you to fall and probably have 3 losses on the season, right? You have to imagine, let's say Texas loses to Georgia this weekend. Probably going to move up over Texas, right? Oklahoma loses to Alabama. Probably going to move up over them. So you can see where there's an opportunity for Miami to fight their way into a potential at-large bid at 10-2, even if they're sitting at home not playing in the ACC title game. They did also mention this on the broadcast, and we had talked about this a little bit on Three Man Front yesterday as well. There is technically, now there might be a 1% chance of it happening, but there is technically out there in the ethos a scenario where the ACC does not get a single team in the college football playoff. And I know that, again, it's a very, very minor possibility, but it is a possibility. And essentially what would happen is Miami would have to lose again. Duke would have to win the ACC title game. And at that point, your highest ranked champion would be Duke, who is probably at best going to finish like 8-5. And at that point, a team like James Madison that could be 11-1, 10-2, whatever it might be at that point, they could be ranked higher than Duke would be because, the way that the rules work is if they don't have 5 conference champions in the top 25, they keep ranking them after that until they get to a 5th conference champion and that team gets in, which could be a James Madison type situation. So again, very, very slim chances that happens, but it could happen. It's not going to happen, but it could happen.
Right. But I'm just kind of conflicted because the ACC, it's kind of the product of your own mistakes. Like the losses that your quote unquote better teams have had, some have been extremely detrimental, and then some have been against each other. So I can't necessarily say the ACC, they're extremely top heavy, but there's just so many avenues and caveats. I don't look at Miami right now as one of the 12 best teams in college football. I don't.
Well, and I think what people get enamored with is, I think you can make an argument they're one of the 12 most talented teams in college football, and that's why people, yes.
But what we've been presented in actual games, it's not there. I'm not there with it.
No, it's not.
So it's the ACC is kind of, if anything, you need Georgia Tech to win out. You're going to need Georgia Tech. You're going to need Virginia. There are just so many other teams in the ACC that play a factor in this. Like Pitt. Like Pitt can kind of
What if they beat Notre Dame this weekend?
Right.
That'll knock Notre Dame out of the playoff, and that puts Pitt in interesting spot. Yeah.
There are so many teams that control other teams' destiny that it's kind of a crapshoot. Like you said, there's a possibility, there is a legit possibility that the ACC may not be represented in the college football playoff. And if they are, it's not even going to be their conference champion. That's kind of, it's backwards to me. It's, well, what's the point of y'all playing the ACC? What's the point of the ACC title game if you're not even guaranteed a playoff spot if you win it? If you're Duke, you're just well, dang. What was all this for?
Well, that's what happens when you don't really have a truly dominant team in the conference.
Right.
Again, it's you have a lot of solid teams, but again, even I like Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's very beatable. Georgia Tech should have multiple losses, right? They kind of got saved in that Wake Forest game. Let's be honest. I like Miami. I think Miami at the beginning of the year was easily one of the 3 best teams in the country at the beginning of the year. The last month of the season, they haven't been even a top 25 team, in my opinion. Because, you've lost 2 games that you should have easily won. And again, everybody gets one, right? Everybody gets one mulligan. Everyone gets one, oops, my bad. But when you start getting into multiple, that's where it gets tough. So the ACC, it's going to be very fascinating to see how that whole thing progresses. as we move forward into the coming weeks of the rankings. And let's be honest, right? This weekend you're going to have a lot of matchups, like we already mentioned: Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. That's going to be at the top of the list in terms of ranking or matchups that are going to have a huge implications on what the rankings look like next week. So always interesting to hear from the committee. Always good to get together on a Tuesday night and get to talk about college football playoffs. So a lot left to go, a lot of season left to go, a lot of games left to play, a lot left to be decided. So again, these rankings, do they mean a whole lot right now? No, but it just kind of giving us a little bit of insight into what that committee's thinking and how they're going to handle things moving forward until we get to Selection Sunday. But we have a lot of other things going on in the world of college football as well. It looks like some promising times ahead on the plains of Auburn, thanks to one John Cohen, what he had to say about Auburn's coaching search, and a surprising name at the top of one leaderboard for the LSU Tigers. We'll get you up to date on all of the college football coaching news. That's coming up next here on JOX. 6:20 here on your Wednesday morning. Welcome back into Morning JOX. Appreciate you making us a part of your morning each and every day right here on JOX as we roll along with the college football conversation as we broke down the college football playoff rankings for you in the first segment of the show. And now we move to the college football coaching carousel, which is always an interesting place to be. So let's start off with Auburn because you had a lot of I guess a lot of different opportunities really to hear from Athletics Director John Cohen yesterday as he I think the way that he did this was excellent, right? As he coordinated a number of interviews with local media and ways of discussing, essentially like having Q&As about the Auburn coaching search and the direction that it's headed. And I thought that, again, from everything that I was able to read and everything that I was able to see, I thought a lot of the interviews were really, really good. I thought that the way that John Cohen presented himself and the situation at hand, it felt like a guy that had a plan, and he is very confident in the direction that this coaching search is headed, and that ultimately whoever it is that is named the next head coach of the Auburn Tigers, that it is going to be a very thorough process to determine that, and that they are going to walk away with who they feel is truly the best person for the job. So I think that, again, that's just my takeaway from reading and listening to some of these interviews. I thought that all of that stuff looked very buttoned up, and you had to feel pretty good about it. And so I'll share this quote from you because this is a quote that John Cohen gave. This was from his interview with Auburn Undercover yesterday. I think that was the first interview that came out, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday. But this is a quote from Athletics Director John Cohen. He said, "We have probably had conversations with 7 or 8 sitting head coaches. We'll get that number down. I would love to have a head coach within 24 hours after the Iron Bowl is over. Is that possible? I don't know. The reason I don't know that is because I don't know how our candidate seasons are going to progress over the next 3 weeks." So obviously that leads you to believe that they're talking to a number of people that have, in one way or another, whether, however likely it is, right, they have aspirations or the potential of being in a college football playoff. And so that could determine kind of how that whole process lays out. But clearly, right, I mean, that's when you're telling me you're 2 weeks into, not even 2 weeks into this new era of Auburn football, you've already talked to 7 or 8 sitting head coaches, I would imagine at the Division I level, and had, we don't know exactly who the names are. I think safe to say like John Summerall's, I'm sure, one of those names, right? Like I think there's a few guys we can look at and say, okay, yeah, I'm sure that is a conversation that's been had. But I think you have to feel good right now if you're Auburn about the direction that this is headed ultimately, right? We don't know how it's going to end, but right now seems like it's in pretty good hands with John Cohen and the way that he's handling this. But that will take us to betonline.ag because we're going to get to another coaching search here in a second that's been drawing a lot of headlines in the last 24 hours. But if we go there right now for the Auburn head coaching job at minus 150, the favorite is John Summerall. Not a big surprise there. Again, I know some people were doubling down yesterday in the media of, John Summerall's a guy you really need to know. Yes, we've been telling you that since we've been telling you that since before Hugh Freeze got fired, that John Summerall was probably the one guy. Yep. If there was one guy you needed to keep an eye on, it was him. And up to this point, we have been proven correct in that. Doesn't mean he's going to get the job, but up to this point, still the favorite. Right behind him, though, at plus 300, DJ Durkin. Right behind him there is at plus 500, James Franklin. I don't think that one's going to happen. After that, you have plus 700, which is Jeff Brom. Again, this is a rumor. I don't think that one's happening.
Yeah.
According to some stuff out there. Don't think that one's happening. Kenny Dillingham's there at plus 900, and then Eli Drinkwitz at plus 1,600. That's your top 6. And in my opinion, it's really more of maybe a top 4 because Jeff Brom and James Franklin, I feel pretty good those aren't happening.
I'm with you.
So that's where you stand right now if you're Auburn. But again, as you heard there, if I guess all goes according to plan for one John Cohen, you're going to have a new head coach in the next 3 weeks if you're Auburn, because that would be by the end of, I guess the Sunday after the Iron Bowl. You would feel like you would have an idea of what direction your program's going to be headed in. So we'll see. But I think yesterday was a good day if you're an Auburn fan and maybe ease some of those concerns that you may have moving forward. Quickly, though, let's talk about LSU because I thought this was a mistake. I really did. I thought it was a mistake. And I don't agree with it, but we have to talk about it because obviously there's a reason that it's here. And that, of course, is if you didn't see it yesterday, the odds-on favorite, according to betonline.ag right now for the LSU head coaching job, it's not Lane Kiffin. It's not Joe Brady. It's Nick Saban. He has 2-1 odds right now of being named the next head coach at LSU, which I maintain that I do not think that is going to happen. I think if you are the kind of person that's putting money on that, go donate it to charity. It'll be better off there. But I think it's also fair to say that he's not going to have those kind of odds if there's not some reason out there that there is to believe that he's at least would entertain the idea of it. So again, I don't know exactly what to tell you. I know that I listened to Matt Moscona yesterday on his program down in Baton Rouge. He maintained that he still has people that are saying, no, that's not happening. Absolutely not. No, don't even consider it. Okay, so then why does he have the best odds according to Las Vegas, who they're typically pretty good at this kind of thing? Why would he have 2-1 odds to be the next head coach at LSU if we all believe there's no chance in hell or whatever?
Somebody from LSU probably shot him a text and said, hey, coach, I don't know if you know what's going on down here in Baton Rouge, if it's made its way up to you up there in College Game Day. I know you were celebrating your birthday a couple days ago, but we were just wondering, in the event that the job was open, would you be interested in coming back?
I'm not going to, so quit asking.
That was his quote.
And again, I go back to, you had the new AD, Verge Osberry. He had mentioned, I guess, last week that him and Nick Saban talk on almost a weekly basis. Like, they talk all the time.
Right.
Again, and who knows, maybe he's just really good at, playing, the cards close to the vest here. But I guess I don't understand. Like, he came out and said, yeah, that's not obviously, if it happened, I would go out there. I would drive there myself, pick him up, and bring him to Baton Rouge. Like, that's what he said. So if I have the athletics director, who I understand maybe he's not the one totally in charge there, but if he's telling me he talks to Nick Saban regularly and it's not happening, I'm probably going to believe it's not happening. So, again, but I know a lot of people were freaking out about that yesterday, and we got to take the name of the field away. Like, you can't be Saban Field if he's going to go to LSU and all this. And
it's like, man,
I get it. Look, I'd be very frustrated if it happened. I'm not saying I'd be happy about it. Be a heck of a story though.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not going to happen.
The man's just turned 74?
It's not going to happen.
He just turned 74. Why do we want to put him back at work? Let him enjoy retirement. He seems like he's making a pretty good penny on College Game Day. He ain't got time to go back down there and deal with these prima donna college football athletes. That's the whole reason he got up out the business anyway. He's like, man, I'm too old for this. I ain't finna go down here and deal with all this foolishness of roster management. And, if my quarterback is out here throwing 6 interceptions, I ain't finna pay him all this money. Like, no, we got to have some. No, to me, it's a definite, nah, this is not happening. And again, if you got money, disposable income, and you want to sprinkle it on something, how about you just donate to the Morning JOX, NIL fund? We would happily oblige. Like, we got you. We'll save you a pretty penny. But I wouldn't believe that Nick Saban is trying to get back into coaching. And if he did, why would he go back to LSU? You see that they're not trying to give Brian Kelly his money. You think they ain't going to give Nick Saban his money? Come on now. This is business. Like, this is business, big dog. We ain't playing around with y'all.
No. It's just it's interesting, and I know we've already had a few people text in this morning of, oh, is this actually going to happen? Why are y'all not talking about this? Well, if we thought it was actually happening, we would have let off the show with it. But
right,
it's a fun conversation to have while you're. It's a fun conversation to have.
Go get Mike Gundy and leave it and stop playing. Yeah, get on Mike Gundy down there. He'll take it. Whatever money that you got to pay Brian Kelly, you can give him half of that, and he'll be fine. Or go get Jimbo. If you want all your coaches coming back to LSU, go get Jimbo. Go get Will Muschamp. Bring them on back. Nick Saban ain't coming down there, man. Stop it. Stop.
You just ruined every LSU fan's day that's listening to this show right now, Damian. But nonetheless, the college football carousel moves along, and we'll keep you up to date on everything going on here. Not really anything on the Florida side. And I look, if you were on Twitter last night, I know you saw a lot of stuff about Arkansas or a lot of people acting like they knew something about Arkansas. I will just say I talked to somebody this morning that I trust that
Like, come on now.
just people love to troll. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
on
they
social
do.
media. Yeah. So that's where we are. But the college football conversation rolls along. Let's talk a little bit about Alabama and Oklahoma. That's a big one coming up this weekend. Some early thoughts on that matchup. And is Alabama's run game, is that going to ultimately hold them back from reaching their full potential this season? We'll dive into that next here on JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Wednesday morning, 6:35. As we roll along with the college football conversation, Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you as we will get to some of your text here on the Courtesy GMC text line, and then we'll talk a little Alabama and Oklahoma. But a lot of you have some thoughts on the Nick Saban conversation as if you're just now joining us. According to betonline.ag, this is not. I was going to make a joke. I don't want to make a joke about Greg.
Yeah, he started all those.
Yeah,
SEC media days.
Yeah, that was fun. That was actually a really fun day.
And that was and also sidebar about SEC media days. I started thinking, that's where you were kicking it with Sam Pittman, and you kicked it with Hugh Freeze, and now they don't have jobs anymore. So you're like the Grim Reaper when it comes to head coaches getting fired. Did you hang with Billy Napier too?
I did not. I will just say this: there is only one of those coaches that I was with in the bar. All right, and as we get your thoughts on the courtesy GMC text line, because again, I mean, this is not an opinion. This is just what Vegas is telling us right now. Nick Saban 2-1 odds according to BetOnline.ag to be the next LSU coach. Me and Damian aren't buying it. I don't think a lot of you are buying it either. But JB from Haleyville chimes in. He says Nick Saban didn't have a buy clause in his contract at Alabama. Do you think he would have one if he went to LSU? I'll be honest. If Nick Saban went to LSU, I think that'd be a very fascinating contract. Because I would think you would have to, if you're Nick Saban, you'd probably want an out, I would think, after almost every single year, but you would also want an insane amount of guaranteed money. Yeah. I don't even,
game by game basis.
I can't even begin to think what that would have to look like for him to even consider taking that job or any job, not just because it's LSU, but any job. Steven says, I'm an LSU fan, but come on, Nick Saban is not about to come out of retirement. They can hang that one up. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's
exactly.
A lot of people feel you. A lot of people happy that you just played some Hardy.
Yeah. It's a throwback.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title of the song.
Mm-hmm. Not familiar with that one. I guess I'll have to educate myself later.
It's all good.
Let's see. This one says, I'll bet the bank that Auburn doesn't hire John Summerall. It's pretty obvious after watching Cohen's interview with Mike Gittens yesterday. Cohen has someone else. Last 5 minutes of the interview, Cohen singles out a candidate like he already has someone. Let's see. And then, okay. He's talking about, okay, yes. I understand that there was a comment that was made about, in one of the John Cohen interviews about, it led people to believe that maybe Kurt Cignetti would be a name that would be in play in terms of, the financials not getting in the way, but I don't.
The amount of money it would take.
A lot of money.
A lot.
A lot of money. This one says, wouldn't want to be in John Cohen's seat. You can't take Summerall and him not work out, or you cannot take him and he go be a national champion somewhere else. Or you could take him and he wins a national championship at Auburn. That's always possible. Always possible. So we appreciate you chiming in there. We'll get back to some of your texts here as we roll along on the show. But did want to take a little bit of time to talk about this Alabama and Oklahoma game. And we'll give you our keys to victory for this one tomorrow and kind of break it down a little more in depth. But I guess my questions for you, Damian, are going to be about the run game. But before we get into that, this is a big game. I mean, obviously, right, it's a top 11 matchup based on what the rankings are going to tell you. But this is a game, if you're Alabama, not only if you win this, I mean, let's be honest. If you win this game, you're making the college football playoff because you're going to beat Eastern Illinois. Worst case scenario, you lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl. You're 10-2. And maybe you go to an SEC championship game and lose there and you're 10-3, you're still going to make the playoff. You're not going to fall out if you go to the go to the SEC title game and lose. They talked about that last night. That's not going to happen unless they just got absolutely blown out by, 30 plus to Texas A&M or whoever. But this is a game. If you win this game, you're going to be in the college football playoff. You're practically going to be in the SEC championship game. You still need a little bit of help, but if you beat Oklahoma and Georgia beats Texas, see you in Atlanta, right, at that point. So there's a lot on the line for this game. And obviously, if you're Alabama, don't think you want your hopes and dreams to lie on you winning an Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So this game is very important for Alabama and them securing their postseason spot. Now, with all that being said, with how the actual matchup plays out, is this a game where you look at Alabama's inability to run the ball? Because I think there's two trains of thought that I've heard from people on this one is, all right, I'm really starting to get worried about the limitations this offense might have if they can't run the football. On the other hand, well, Oklahoma's really good at stopping the run. So does it really matter if we can't run the football anyways? Because it's not like most teams are going to be able to do it anyways when you're playing Oklahoma. How do you kind of view that going into this game? Is this a game that Alabama can win? You know, if they have 56 rushing yards again, like they did against LSU this past weekend, or is that something that you're going to need to see from them to believe that they can actually get this win on Saturday?
I look at this game specifically with Oklahoma kind of an anomaly because Oklahoma's defense is legit. It's one of the, if not the best defense you're going to face all season long. And we had a conversation on Mac and Cube yesterday, and I mean, it was fun, but it really made sense. I had to go back and just kind of listen to it and just try to process it all. Like, the run game is like a marriage. Like, you got to commit to it. Like, it's not one of those things that, you can't be halfway doing it and then halfway out. Like, you got to be fully committed to saying, hey, whether thick or thin, we are going to commit to actually run the football. If that means we're just getting 2 to 3 yards here, that 2 to 3 yard gain in the first quarter may end up being 7 or 8 in the fourth because you still committed to the grind. Of course, with the glitz and the glamour, it's tough. Even as a former receiver myself, we want the ball. Like, you have playmakers out wide. Not to say, and even Kalen DeBoer spoke about it yesterday, the horizontal passing game of, a quick screen here, some swing passes there. They assist their kind of quote-unquote forms of the run game, but it's a passing ball, like the jet sweep, like the touch pass. So we see those things. But an actual commitment to trying to grind this thing out, it just takes time. It takes time. But I think for Oklahoma, defensively, you need to kind of sell out to stop Ty Simpson. Make it cloudy for him because he's shown that some of those deeper routes he hasn't been as accurate on. It's the stuff that's in the middle. It's the intermediate routes. It's the 12 to 15 yards down the field where he's dialing it up. So I think for Oklahoma's sake, defensively, you have to force Alabama saying you are going to have to prove to us you can go back into the time machine and have a Derrick Henry type game, Josh Jacobs. Like, show us that you are truly committed to running the football, and we'll see if we can stop you. Because to me, I think you have to play cloud coverage, just saying, hey, we're going to put our safeties back. We're going to play everything outside in and just prove to us that you can actually stick to running the football. And does Kalen DeBoer have in him? Because you think even when he was at Washington, he had 1,000-yard rushers. And now
Dylan Johnson ran for 1,200 yards when they went to the national championship.
So it's not like he's afraid of running the football. You kind of have to just look at what your personnel is. Maybe they just don't have the mauling offensive linemen. Maybe they sacrifice a little bit of that mauler mentality for some athleticism to get them out wide. Like, we've seen Caden Proctor run the football. We've seen him catch the ball. Like, we've seen him. It's the point of attack that's different, but you have to commit to it in order for it to have success because you got to be patient.
Yeah, and something you just said there, and something that I've wondered, and look, there's many smarter football minds out there than I do that would understand this better than me, but I just go and look at, it feels like there are opportunities, and maybe it's just because of, when that play is called, or it's a situation where maybe the defense is backing off a little bit, and so it looks better. But it feels like there's opportunities or situations, very few, but in every game where they'll, do a pitch outside or do an outside handoff type thing and try to get around and get the running back on the perimeter, and it works. And then they go back to trying to run it just up the middle, and it doesn't work. And it feels like they don't. I don't know. I guess from my standpoint, I'm like, why are we not trying to run the football outside more? Because that seems to be where you have more success, right? I even go back to the end of the LSU game, and I know that you had to do that kind of trick play at the end to convert on fourth down. But the play before that, it was a pitch to the left of Daniel Hill. He got like 7 yards. And you're sitting there going, why are we not running that in the first and second quarter? Why are we hanging on to that until the fourth quarter? Because I agree with you, right? The way that you want to do it is you want to wear down the defensive front to where in the fourth quarter, like you're saying, you're able to turn those 2-yard runs into 6-yard runs. And then at that point, you're playing bully ball. And that's what you're used to seeing under Nick Saban, and it's been a while since you've been able to do that if you're Alabama. But I guess that's just one of those things for me as well, where I look at it and I go, it feels like it almost feels like you're hurting yourself, right? Like you need to mix it up a little bit more with the run looks you're giving the defense because you're having success running outside, but then when you're trying to go back and run it between the tackles, it's just not really working particularly well for Alabama. And I will say this as well, one thing potentially good, we'll find out more tonight when the injury reports come out, but it does look like R. Mason Thomas is not going to play in this game. which if you're Alabama and you're not familiar with who that is, he's the best
You'll
player
take
on. He is the best player on that defense.
Yeah.
So maybe that gives you a little bit of optimism, but of course we'll see how all that plays out over the next couple of days. But I just wanted to kind of have that quick conversation about Alabama, the run game, and some of those concerns. And as I said, we'll give our keys to victory tomorrow and kind of break down that game a little bit more in depth. But we do want to get back to your text as well, because we have many more that we have yet to get to today, talking about college football playoff, coaching carousel, and this game coming up on Saturday between Alabama and Oklahoma. So courtesy GMC text line is open. That's where we head next here on JOX. Morning Jocks here. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell, spending a few more minutes with you and everything going on in the world of college football before we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning, where they will obviously be continuing the conversation. Going to be interesting to get more of Greg's expanded thoughts as he was on the broadcast last night. As you can see him each and every Tuesday night there on ESPN for the college football playoff rankings as we move on towards the postseason. But a lot of you chiming in with your thoughts on the courtesy GMC text line, and we always like to give you an opportunity to chime in with all of your thoughts and questions, comments, concerns, all of that good stuff, everything going on around the world of college football. I did quickly want to give a shout out, though, Auburn basketball. I know, it's still early on in the season, but they get a 31-point win over Wofford last night. Keyshawn Hall continues to be just one of the best players in the entire country. He had 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists last night for Auburn. They absolutely crushed them on the boards. Still, maybe not shooting quite what you want, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, under 70% from the free throw line. But, hey, a 31-point win at home, you'll take that and move forward. And we all know that Auburn is going to get a lot of challenges here moving forward, as their next game is going to be against Houston, who is the new number one team in the country. But you've also got Michigan, you've got Arizona, and Purdue. All of those are top 10 matchups coming up for Auburn here in the next 5 weeks or so. So things about to ramp up for them. And, of course, Alabama, they're going to be taking on Purdue tomorrow night in Tuscaloosa. But shout out to Auburn basketball, 31-point victory for Stephen Pearl and the Tigers last night. All right, let's get to your text, courtesy GMC text line. Steven chiming in here. He says, I believe Alabama just needs to be consistent with the run over 3 quarters in order to wear down Oklahoma's front. Bama's defense will keep you in it, so the pass game can come when it's needed if the game is close, but just establish the run and show that you can do it. And I will say, I think this is going to be a lower scoring game on Saturday, and I do think that certainly plays into Alabama's favor with this kind of thing, right? And if you can get any semblance of a run game going, because that's the thing, right? It hasn't been great this year, but you go back to like the Vanderbilt game, for example, or the Missouri game, where it was good enough to where you were able to dominate the time of possession.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's maybe one of the concerns that I have is it feels like the run game's like almost gotten worse since then, because it's like if it just stayed where it was, you could kind of work with that, but now it's like, oh, you're just really not getting anything. Right
Yeah,
now.
it was effective. Like it wasn't like it was
You had it when
dominating.
you needed it.
Yeah, you had to respect it. So, and to your point, I think it has necessarily gotten worse. But LSU, in hindsight, I know the LSU game just still feels kind of, iffy. But, again, the run game isn't cute. Like, it's just not. It's not pretty. It's kind of one of those things that you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt week to week. But we're so used to Alabama just being able to line up, dominate, going about the next game, that you kind of question it a little bit when you have games like that. But yet, again, you still won by 2 touchdowns, but it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like you dominated.
Correct. This text rolls in and says, Jam squares up 3 lines behind the line of scrimmage before he attacks a lane. Therefore, he often takes a 1 or 2 yard loss. On the other hand, Daniel Hill attacks the line looking for holes while not slowing down. If he could pass block better, I think Jam would be second string now. I'll say this. I like Daniel Hill a lot. Obviously, that Jam is the best running back you have at everything outside of the actual running of the football. I do think I would like to see Daniel Hill get, some more opportunities, because at the end of the day, right, if your run game is going to be predicated on, all right, who's a guy that can get the ball, pick up 1 yard, and then maybe drag a couple defenders for 2 or 3 more yards, that's going to be Daniel Hill. And if that's the way that you're going to have to go to get some tough yards, then maybe we do see some of that. Let's see. Someone is agreeing with you, Damian, on what you were saying about Alabama's run game. They say, who runs the ball well in college football? Iowa?
Missouri.
They're pretty good at that, too. They do a pretty good
Service
job.
academies.
They do a pretty good job with that. Let's see. This one says, keep up the good work, men. Roll Tide. Appreciate you chiming in there. We're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. SEC injury reports, but Mac and Cube in the morning. Those guys are up next.